Have you ever had one of those days where everything just feels heavy? Like no matter what you do, the weight of the world is sitting right on your shoulders and you can't shake it off?
Oh, absolutely. And I think what makes it worse is that everyone around you seems to be just fine. You're struggling and the world keeps moving like nothing's happening.
Exactly. And today we're diving into something that I think a lot of people need to hear. How to actually stay positive during hard times. Not in a fake, pretend everything is perfect kind of way, but in a real, honest, sustainable way.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize that word, sustainable, because there's a big difference between slapping a smile on your face and genuinely building the kind of resilience that gets you through the tough stuff.
Right. Resilience. And that's a word we'll come back to a lot today. It basically means your ability to recover, to bounce back after something difficult happens. It's not about never falling down. It's about how you get back up.
That's a great way to put it. I always think of it like a tree in a storm. A rigid tree, one that's totally stiff, snaps. But a flexible tree, one that bends with the wind, that one survives.
I love that image, and I think that's what we're really talking about today, how to become that flexible tree. So Jake, let's start with something fundamental. What do you think is the very first thing people get wrong when they're trying to stay positive during hard times?
Honestly, I think the number one mistake is trying to suppress, basically push down or ignore negative emotions. People think that staying positive means you should never feel sad, never feel angry, never feel lost, and that's just not realistic.
That's such an important point, because there's this cultural message, especially on social media, that says good vibes only, right? Like negativity is somehow a character flaw, but that's not how human psychology works.
Not at all. And actually, when you suppress your emotions, when you bottle things up, they don't disappear. They kind of ferment, like leaving something in a jar too long. Eventually, it builds pressure and something explodes.
That's a slightly terrifying image, but it's accurate. So what's the alternative? If we're not supposed to push feelings away, what do we do with them?
We acknowledge them. We sit with them for a moment. There's this concept in psychology called emotional validation, which just means accepting that what you're feeling is real and understandable. You don't have to agree with the feeling or act on it. You just let it exist.
And that in itself can be incredibly liberating, freeing even. Just saying to yourself, I'm struggling right now, and that's okay. It sounds simple, but for a lot of people, it's actually very hard to do.
It is, because many of us were taught, either by family, by culture, or by society, that showing vulnerability is a weakness. Vulnerability meaning being open about your struggles, your fears, your pain. But actually, research shows the opposite is true.
Brené Brown, the researcher and author, talks about this a lot. She argues that vulnerability is actually the birthplace of courage and connection. That when we open up, we don't become weaker, we become more human, more relatable.
And more connected to other people, which brings me to something I think is really crucial: community. Having people around you during hard times is not a luxury, it's almost a necessity.
Okay, let's talk about that. Because I know a lot of people who, when things get hard, they actually pull away from others. They isolate themselves. Is that instinct something you understand, or do you think it's always counterproductive, meaning it works against you?
I understand it completely. When I'm going through something difficult, my first instinct is often to go quiet, to not burden anyone, to figure it out alone. And I think a lot of people feel that way.
Me too, honestly.
But here's the thing. Isolation tends to amplify negative thoughts. When you're alone with your mind during a hard period, your mind can start running in circles. You ruminate, which means you keep replaying the same worries, the same fears, over and over, and that rarely leads anywhere helpful.
It's like being stuck in a loop, and having another person there, even if they don't say anything brilliant, even if they just listen, breaks that loop.
Exactly. There's actually a term for this: co-regulation. It's the idea that humans regulate their emotions partly through connection with other humans. We literally calm each other down on a biological level.
That's fascinating. And it makes sense when you think about it. Think about how much better you feel after a good conversation with a friend, or even just sitting with someone you trust in silence.
Silence can be incredibly powerful. Not every moment of support needs to be filled with advice or words. Sometimes presence is enough.
That's beautifully said. Okay, so we've talked about acknowledging emotions and leaning into connection. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about something a little more practical. What are some daily habits or routines that genuinely help people maintain a positive mindset when things are hard?
Great question. And I want to start with one that might sound almost too simple. Sleep. People underestimate how much sleep deprivation, meaning not getting enough sleep, affects your emotional state.
Completely. When I'm sleep deprived, everything feels worse. Problems that are manageable when I'm rested feel completely overwhelming when I'm tired.
That's because your brain's emotional regulation system is heavily dependent on sleep. The prefrontal cortex, which handles rational thinking and emotional control, basically goes offline when you're exhausted. And the amygdala, the part of your brain that processes fear and threat, becomes hyperactive.
So you're literally more anxious, more reactive, more negative when you haven't slept. It's not just in your head. Well, I mean, it is in your head, but it's physiological. It's happening in your brain chemistry.
Right. It's in your head, but it's also very real. And paired with sleep, movement, physical movement. You don't have to run marathons. Even a 20-minute walk can significantly shift your mood.
And I think the reason people resist that, especially when they're in a dark place, is because it feels impossible. Like, I can barely get off the couch, and you want me to exercise?
I know, and that's valid. But here's a reframe, a different way of looking at it. You're not exercising for fitness goals during a hard time. You're doing it as medicine. You're doing it to create a chemical change in your brain. Because movement releases endorphins and serotonin, which are your body's natural mood boosters.
It's almost like hacking your own brain chemistry in a healthy way.
Exactly. And once you do it, once you push through that initial resistance and go for that walk, you almost always feel at least a little better. Not cured, but better.
Okay, I want to talk about something that I personally find really useful, and I'm curious if you do too. Gratitude. Practicing gratitude during hard times. Because I know some people roll their eyes at this. They think it's just toxic positivity dressed up in nicer language.
I can see why people are skeptical, because if someone is going through genuine hardship, loss, illness, financial crisis, and you tell them to just be grateful, that can feel dismissive, like you're minimizing their pain.
Right, it can feel like a slap in the face. Like, my life is falling apart, but sure, let me write in my gratitude journal.
Exactly. But here's the nuance. Gratitude practice done well is not about denying your pain. It's about widening your lens. It's saying, yes, this part of my life is really hard, and there are still some things that are okay, or even good.
It's the and, not the but. Because but dismisses. It says this bad thing exists, but here's something good, so forget the bad thing. And holds both truths at the same time.
That's a really elegant distinction. And research backs this up. People who regularly practice gratitude show measurably higher levels of well-being, better sleep, and lower stress hormones, even during difficult periods.
So it works, but I think the key is being genuine about it. Not forcing yourself to feel grateful for things you don't actually feel grateful for. Start small. Like, I'm grateful that I had a warm cup of coffee this morning. That's real.
Small and specific, that's the key. Vague gratitude, like I'm grateful for my life, doesn't really land in the same way. But I'm grateful for the way my dog looked at me this morning. That's something you can actually feel.
I love that. Okay, let's talk about something that I think is really underrated in conversations about positivity, and that is meaning. Finding meaning in difficult experiences.
Oh, this is a rich topic. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust, wrote about this in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. His central argument was that humans can endure almost any how if they have a why. Meaning, if you understand the purpose or meaning behind your suffering, you can bear almost anything.
That's a profound idea. And it's not about making suffering romantic or pretending it's good. It's about asking, what can I learn from this? How is this shaping me? What strength is being built in me right now?
And sometimes the meaning isn't clear in the moment. Sometimes you only understand what a difficult period taught you when you look back on it, months or years later.
That's so true. I've had experiences that felt completely pointless and painful while I was living through them. And then looking back, I could see exactly why they happened and what they gave me.
Hindsight is a powerful teacher. The challenge is having faith, or at least a tentative belief, that the meaning might be there, even when you can't see it yet.
And that connects to something else, perspective. Specifically, the idea of zooming out. When you're in the middle of a crisis, everything feels enormous and permanent. But most things are not permanent.
This is where the phrase, "this too shall pass," comes from. And I know it can sound cliché, overused, almost empty, but it's actually grounded in something real. Psychologists call it affective forecasting, our ability to predict how we'll feel in the future, and we're actually terrible at it.
We almost always overestimate how long and how intensely negative emotions will last. We think, I'll never get over this. But statistically, emotionally, we do.
Humans are remarkably adaptable. There's even a term for it, hedonic adaptation. It means we return to a baseline level of happiness relatively quickly after both positive and negative events. Good things don't make us as happy as long as we expect, and bad things don't keep us as sad as long as we fear.
Which is both humbling and comforting, depending on how you look at it.
Exactly. It means you're more resilient than you give yourself credit for. You've survived every hard day you've ever had. That's a 100% success rate so far.
Oh, I love that. That's genuinely encouraging. Okay, I want to bring up something that I think a lot of people deal with but don't talk about enough, and that's the comparison trap. Especially during hard times, people look around at others and think, why is everyone else doing so well? Why is my life so difficult?
Social comparison is one of the most destructive habits we have, and social media has turned it up to maximum volume. You're scrolling through images of people's highlight reels, their best moments, their happiest faces, their biggest achievements, and comparing that to your behind-the-scenes reality.
It's completely unfair to yourself. You're comparing your inside to someone else's outside, your genuine, messy, complicated inner world against someone's carefully curated public image.
And the thing is, those people posting the beautiful images are also struggling. They also have hard days. They also lie awake at 3 a.m. worrying about things. They just don't post that.
Because vulnerability, as we said earlier, is still not fully accepted or celebrated online. People post strength and happiness. They hide doubt and pain.
So the solution? Be mindful of your social media consumption, especially during low periods. It's not about deleting everything and going off the grid, though sometimes a short break genuinely helps. It's about being intentional, asking yourself, does scrolling right now make me feel better or worse?
And if the honest answer is worse, put the phone down. Do something else. Call a friend. Go for that walk we mentioned. Make that cup of coffee you can then genuinely be grateful for.
It all connects. And that brings up a really good point. These strategies we're talking about don't work in isolation. They compound. They build on each other. Sleep feeds your emotional regulation. Movement releases the chemicals. Gratitude shifts your perspective. Connection breaks the isolation. Together, they create something much stronger than any one of them alone.
It's like building a support structure rather than relying on one pillar. If all your stability depends on one thing, say just meditation or just exercise, and that one thing is disrupted, you collapse. But if you have multiple sources of stability, you can lose one and still stand.
Beautifully put. And I think that's why people who've been through hard times multiple times often navigate them better. Not because they're stronger or tougher by nature, but because they've built a toolkit. They know what helps. They've practiced.
Experience as a teacher, which circles back to the idea of meaning. Hard times teach us things. They add tools to that kit.
Exactly. And one of the most powerful tools in that kit, I think, and this one might surprise people, is self-compassion. Being kind to yourself the way you would be kind to a good friend.
Oh, this one is huge, because most people are absolutely brutal to themselves. The things people say to themselves internally, the the self-criticism, the shame, the I should have done better, I'm so stupid, why can't I get it together? They would never say those things to a friend who is struggling.
Never. If a good friend came to you and said, I'm going through a really hard time, I feel like I'm failing, you would not say, yeah, you're right, you're a total mess. You'd be kind. You'd be understanding. You'd offer support.
So why don't we extend that same courtesy to ourselves? Kristen Neff, who is a leading researcher on self-compassion, talks about 3 components: self-kindness, common humanity, meaning recognizing that struggle is part of being human, not a personal failure, and mindfulness, meaning being aware of your pain without exaggerating it or dismissing it.
That second one, common humanity, is so important because when we're suffering, we often feel alone. We feel like we're the only one who can't manage life. But the truth is, suffering is universally human. Every single person on this planet has periods of genuine difficulty.
It doesn't make your pain smaller to know that others feel pain too, but it does make it feel less isolating, less like a personal verdict.
Less like there's something fundamentally wrong with me, and more like this is a hard chapter that humans sometimes go through.
A chapter, not the whole book. I like that. Okay, let's talk about something a bit different: the role of language in how we think and feel. Because I believe that the way we talk to ourselves and about our situation genuinely affects how we experience it.
Absolutely. This is something cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, focuses on a lot. The idea that our thoughts, our language, directly shape our emotional experience. And during hard times, people often fall into what are called cognitive distortions, basically unhelpful thinking patterns that make things feel worse than they are.
Like what? Can you give some examples?
Sure. All or nothing thinking, where you see things in black and white, no middle ground. I failed once, so I'm a complete failure. Or catastrophizing, assuming the worst possible outcome is certain. I lost my job, therefore my life is ruined, therefore I'll never recover. Or mind reading, assuming you know what others are thinking about you and assuming it's negative.
And the truth is, none of those patterns reflect reality accurately. They distort it. They make it darker and more hopeless than it actually is.
And when you notice those patterns, when you catch yourself thinking everything is ruined, you can challenge it. Ask yourself, is this actually true? What's the evidence? Are there other ways to see this situation?
It's like being your own internal lawyer, building a case against your worst thoughts.
Exactly. And with practice, it becomes more automatic. You catch the distorted thought faster and redirect it more quickly.
I want to come back to something you said earlier about community, because I think there's a layer we haven't fully explored, and that's asking for help, which for many people is one of the hardest things to do.
Genuinely one of the hardest, because asking for help requires vulnerability. It requires admitting that you don't have everything under control. And for a lot of people, especially those who've grown up valuing independence and self-sufficiency, that feels almost like defeat.
Like you've somehow failed at life if you need support.
But that thinking is flawed. No human being is designed to handle everything alone. We are fundamentally social creatures. We evolved in communities. We need each other, not occasionally, not as a last resort, but as a regular part of how we function.
And I think it's worth naming that there's a spectrum of help, too. It doesn't have to jump straight to therapy, though therapy is incredibly valuable and nothing to be ashamed of. It can start with just telling one honest friend, hey, I'm not doing great right now.
That's such a good point. Starting small, dipping your toe in rather than diving into the deep end. And often, once you say it once you say, I'm struggling, out loud to someone, it gets a little easier. The shame around it starts to lift.
Because you realize the world didn't end when you admitted vulnerability. Your friend didn't judge you. They probably shared something difficult of their own.
And suddenly you both feel more connected. That one honest conversation can change the whole quality of a relationship.
Okay, Jake, I want to ask you something a little more personal, and feel free to be as open or as guarded as you want. Have you personally been through a period where you genuinely struggled to stay positive? And if so, what actually helped?
Yeah, I'll share one thing. A few years ago, I went through a period of real professional uncertainty. I had left a stable job to pursue something I cared about deeply, and for about a year, nothing was really working, and the self-doubt was overwhelming.
What did that feel like day to day?
Like I had made a massive mistake. Like everyone who had warned me not to do it was right. And I remember this very specific tendency to catastrophize, to think I've wasted years, I have no future here, I should just go back to what was safe. And that voice was very loud.
So what shifted?
Honestly, two things. One was a conversation with someone I really trusted, who just sat with me and didn't try to fix it, just listened. And something about being heard made the panic quiet down a bit. And the second thing was journaling, writing down my thoughts, not to solve them, but just to get them out of my head and onto paper. Because inside my head, they swirled and grew. On paper, they looked more manageable.
That's a great point about journaling that we haven't touched on yet. It's essentially externalizing your internal world, getting the noise out of your head and into a form you can actually look at and examine.
And you don't have to be a writer. It doesn't have to be eloquent or structured. It can literally be bullet points of, here's what I'm feeling, here's what I'm afraid of. The act of writing forces a certain clarity that just thinking doesn't.
I've heard it described as the difference between watching a storm from inside a boat versus watching it from the shore. When your thoughts stay in your head, you're in the storm. When you write them down, you step back and observe them from a safer distance.
That's a perfect analogy, and I think it connects to mindfulness, which is essentially the practice of observing your thoughts without being consumed by them. Noticing, I am having the thought that everything is hopeless, rather than just everything is hopeless.
That small grammatical shift, I am having the thought that, creates distance. It reminds you that thoughts are events that happen in your mind, not facts about reality.
Exactly. And mindfulness doesn't require meditation cushions and incense. It can be as simple as taking 3 deep, intentional breaths when you notice your anxiety spiking, bringing your attention to your senses, what you can see, hear, touch, right now.
Grounding yourself in the present moment, which is almost always less catastrophic than the future we imagine in our anxious minds.
The present moment is usually okay. It's the what-ifs that destroy us. What if this gets worse? What if I never recover? What if this is just how life is now?
And the mind is so good at generating those what-ifs. It's doing its job. It's trying to protect you by anticipating threats. But during a hard time, it overdoes it.
So the practice is gently, patiently redirecting, not fighting your mind, because that creates more tension, but just softly returning your attention to now, like guiding a distracted child rather than scolding them.
I really like that image. The brain is a distracted child that needs gentle redirection, not punishment.
It's surprisingly accurate, and honestly, a lot of self-compassion work is about changing that internal tone, from punishing to nurturing.
Okay, I want to wrap this part up with something practical, something our listeners can actually take away and use today, not in theory, but in real life. If someone is in the middle of a genuinely hard time right now, feeling low, losing hope, what would you say to them? What's the first thing they should do?
The very first thing, tell the truth to yourself. Stop pretending you're fine if you're not. Just sit down somewhere quiet and admit to yourself honestly, I am struggling. This is hard, and that's real. Don't minimize it, don't dramatize it, just acknowledge it.
And then?
Then reach out to one person, one. It doesn't have to be a long, emotional conversation. It can be a text that says, hey, I'm going through a hard patch. Can we talk sometime? That's it. One honest signal to another human.
And from there, the small things, the sleep, the movement, the writing, the gratitude, not all at once, not perfectly, but just starting, one small thing at a time.
Progress, not perfection. Because when you're in a dark place, the idea of transforming your entire life is paralyzing. But the idea of going for a 10-minute walk, that's doable. And that 10-minute walk changes your brain chemistry just enough to make the next step slightly easier.
It's the compound effect again. Small actions building on each other. One good thing making the next good thing a little more possible.
And somewhere in that process, not immediately, not on a timeline, the light comes back. It might be a tiny flicker at first, a moment of genuine laughter, a conversation that reminded you you're not alone, a morning where the weight felt just slightly less heavy.
And you hold on to those moments. You notice them. You let them matter. Because even in hard times, there are those small moments of light, and they're telling you something important. They're telling you that you are still capable of feeling good, that it hasn't been completely extinguished.
That's it. That's the whole thing, really. Hard times are not the end of the story. They're a chapter, and you are still the author.
Jake, that might be the most beautiful thing you've said today, and you've said a lot of beautiful things.
I have my moments, usually surrounded by rambling, but thank you.
No, genuinely. This conversation has covered so much ground, from emotional acknowledgement to community, sleep, movement, gratitude, meaning, perspective, self-compassion, language, mindfulness, journaling, asking for help. We've built something of a full map today.
And none of it is complicated, really. What makes it hard is not the knowledge. Most people kind of know these things. What makes it hard is doing them when you're in pain. That's where the real work is.
That's such an honest observation. It's easy to read a list of positive habits. It's another thing entirely to practice them at 2 a.m. when your mind is spiraling.
Which is why, again, compassion for yourself is so essential. You won't do everything perfectly. You'll have days where you sleep badly and don't exercise and spiral a little. And that's okay. Just begin again the next day or the next hour.
Begin again. Not start over. Begin again. There's a gentleness in that phrase that I really love.
Exactly. Starting over implies you failed and erased everything. Beginning again implies you're just picking up from where you are. Continuity, kindness, forward motion.
Okay, I think that is a genuinely perfect note to pause on. Jake, thank you. This was everything I hoped it would be and then some.
Thank you for having me. And honestly, thank you to everyone listening, because having these conversations matters. It means you're paying attention to your inner life, and that alone is a meaningful act.
It really is. And to everyone listening right now, whether you are in a hard time, coming out of one, or just trying to build the tools before the next one arrives, I want to say this. You are not weak for struggling. You are not broken for needing support. And you are not alone in feeling the weight of difficult things. Staying positive during hard times is not about smiling through pain. It's about choosing, again and again, to take small steps toward the light, to acknowledge your truth, reach for connection, be gentle with yourself, and trust, even when it's hard to, that things can change, that you can change, and that this moment, however heavy, is not permanent. We'll be back again soon with more conversations that we hope make your life and your English a little richer. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, keep going.